What does Poppy Playtime Chapter 5 hide from you behind the scenes in the Biodiversity Lab and Huggy's memories? As you dive deeper into the halls of Playtime Co., you'll come across some pretty frightening stuff. Trees with spooky faces, multiple encounters with an angry prototype, and, of course, an adrenaline-pumping chase with Huggy Wuggy. Today we're taking a look behind the scenes in search of things the developers didn't want you to see, like what really happens when Chum Chompkins eats you, and a closer look at Huggy's memory sequences. We've got lots to explore, so I hope you enjoyed today's look at Poppy Playtime Chapter 5. Now, as usual, I'll hit you with a super quick recap of what we're covering, so we're all up to speed. So we just got done leaving another robotic dinosaur in our wake, and the grab pack is used to ascend an elevator shaft, which leads you to the biodiversity area. You break some tree roots and destroy the forbidden syrup, eventually bursting this large mass to clear the way ahead. After a quick shower, you'll head to the utility room, meet Chum Chompkins on the way out, and see Giblet once again. Up ahead, you'll complete a puzzle to cross the gap, exploring this room, where you ultimately obtain the magnetic power-up for your grab pack. In the room ahead, the player catches a glimpse of the prototype while traversing this tunnel, eventually reuniting with our pals Giblet and Chum. The prototype reappears here, forcing Chum to hide the player in his mouth to keep him safe. We'll put a pin in the recap for now, and rewind time. So as we return to the biodiversity entrance, we can have another look at this area from a different perspective. Honestly, I moved the camera around in this area for quite a bit, since it was cool to see so much greenery, having spent most of the game surrounded by steel and concrete. Also, I'm not certain, but I believe the red flowers on these vines are poppy flowers, but it's hard to say considering they're full of this gross sap stuff. Still throwing it back to my 2021 theory that these things are basically like Resident Evil 5's red progenitor flowers. All in all, this area was really refreshing, which offsets the man-made horrors beyond comprehension. While I was exploring this area, I found this vent that led to a room containing a pretty familiar face. That's right, Lemon is back, and they brought some friends. There are 3 copies of this character present in this little bowl, 4 if you count the spooky ghost one sitting on top. It's mostly transparent and has no discernible features beyond its shape, but still recognizable as everyone's favorite genetically modified citrus. Sorry, annoying orange. In the room ahead, we'll find this huge root system stemming from a freaky tree, and on it are these terrifying face-shaped growths. I don't know if these are fruits or something more sinister, but they are way more scarier when viewed up close like this. Part of me wants to know what exactly we're looking at here, but then again, sometimes not knowing is better. If we pull the camera back so we can view the level from an outside perspective, we can see that this entire map is a cylinder-shaped tower with this huge plant taking up most of the inside. There are tons of pipes and wires occupying the outer walls, and what interested me more is this hidden room off to the side. We can see this from the floor below, but can never get high enough to see inside, meaning it was left unfurnished so as not to waste resources. Despite being an innocent side room, it has a weird energy to it that kinda creeps me out. Back in the main area, I looked up at the slew of faces and decided that destroying the ball of sap may be a bad idea. Instead, I forcefully removed the vines blocking the doorway and then eventually the door itself. But unfortunately, it wasn't that easy. Despite there being nothing here to block our way, there's apparently an invisible barrier present that prevents entry before the goop balloon is busted. I wasn't going back looking like a fool though, and so I forced my way through the barrier anyway. Despite completing practically none of the previous puzzles, the chamber still functioned, and the door behind me closed as expected. I can continue on as usual, only now I'm in the good graces of the haunted tree faces. Not much happens until our meeting with Giblet and Chum, and speaking of which, we can now watch this interaction from another angle. When we finish the electricity puzzle and leave, Chum seems to appear out of nowhere. But from another perspective, you'll see that this is literally the case. Chum appears in an instant, turning the corner to grab you before both of these characters walk off. When Giblet appears, he sort of glitches a bit as his model is warped into the map, stretching his little legs to look a bit taller. These guys lead you into the rooms ahead, but they take a detour that we're apparently not cool enough to use. What's funny is that this door doesn't lead anywhere, and they just stop inside this shadowy box beyond the door. It's kind of hilarious because they seem so awkward here. Almost like they don't know what to do from this point, so they're just hanging out. We'll run into the fellas not long after, only this time they're overlooking the room below. While checking this out, I realized that Giblet wasn't speaking to us at all. We could hear his voice, but his mouth never moved while I was watching him. Is it possible that the prototype was the real voice we heard, and that's why Giblet's mouth never moved? Probably not, but it sounds cool, so we'll roll with it. Anyway, I didn't feel like doing this whole section over again, so I channeled my inner engineer and moved it across the room manually. This is not how the game wants this puzzle solved, but despite this, I was able to cross. Unfortunately though, the platform didn't like my methods, and so it decided to leave. It did so by clipping through the wall and just sort of flying away. I don't know what the heck I did to cause this, but it's definitely glorious. Jumping ahead a bit, we arrive at this small cave area where the prototype is seen leaving through this tunnel. It turns out this character is already here waiting for us this whole time. And when we enter the room, they'll shuffle up the ramp and disappear. Another scare takes place here too, this time being a shadow that passes behind the wall when we approach. What's weird is that I couldn't find what was casting it, and the shadow will just pass through the door before vanishing. In an earlier chapter, they did the same thing, and it was just a video file they projected on the wall. During the following puzzle, I moved the camera out of bounds to explore a bit and found these two just chilling out here. They're just looping in their idle animations, and I'm pretty sure these are the same instances of said characters we meet up with in just a bit. There's actually a scare in this room that I didn't initially notice too. When you approach from the balcony up above, the prototype will appear in this hallway in the back of the room and walk across. This model is one stretched boy, and once out of sight, he passes through the wall and unloads. Now, after being eaten by Chum, we're taken into another room where he spits you out, pats you on the head, and sends you on your way. In this section of the game, we'll obtain a conductor hand that allows you to use different charges to solve puzzles. Your goal is to obtain these discs, which you then take to a machine where it simulates the memories stored inside. These memories are played from Huggy Wuggy's perspective, and in the first 3 memories, you'll place toy blocks in the box, being given a controlled shock for each mistake. No exotic butters, unfortunately. The second memory has you inside a room with music and lights, following the symbols on the floor to continue the game. Unruly toys get thrown to the bad toy box, and this grows more chaotic as the game continues. In the final memory, you're wheeled to the conditioning room, breaking free of your constraints and going on a rampage as Huggy reaches his boiling point. So restarting this section, the first thing I want to mention is the vents up ahead. There are 3 entrances here, but I never noticed a difference when using them. From out of bounds is actually a big mess of ducts, and something we can now see is this Altamol hiding in the very top of these vents. I never saw this creature during gameplay, so I would have never known it was here. I broke into this hallway to explore a bit, but there's nothing here beyond a view straight into the abyss. Anyways, dropping down to the level again leads you to Chum and Giblet, and after handing the papers off, Chum is forced to hide you in his mouth to evade the prototype. When watching this scene with the game's lighting effects still intact, you'll see that the room goes completely dark to help obscure what's happening behind the scenes. We can't really see anything like this though, so we're going to flick the lights on for this scene. Now that we can see, you'll notice that Chum has definitely seen better days. His face is missing, and a ton of fur has vanished as well. But since we're inside his jaws during this time, you would never know it. After a bit, the prototype appears, simply warping into the map and walking through a wall to cross our line of sight. We can barely see him, which helps obscure the fact that he's flying and clipping through the ceiling. This gives the desired appearance from inside Chum's mouth. But outside, it just looks a bit silly. Chum just sort of slides off at the end here, hitting a loading zone where the next section of the level populates. After spitting you out, Chum says his goodbyes and departs, walking around the corner and vanishing, as everyone here seems to enjoy doing. In the next area, you'll find a broken balcony up above that crumbles when you attempt to cross it. I wanted to see what was up here for myself though. By moving myself to the other side, I was able to walk past these boxes and into the hallway behind it. The door doesn't open though, and this hallway just leads to a wall out of sight. I don't know what I was hoping for back here, but I'm still disappointed. Jumping ahead a bit, we can enter the first memory. During this process, I moved the camera out of the machine, and I learned that the pixelated effect doesn't take place in the machine. The entire camera is affected by this pixelation filter, and it's way more jarring than I expected. Now inside the memory, we can watch this cutscene as Huggy wakes up, and as you might expect, only his arms are present. They stretch upwards as he stands up, and then vanish as the player model takes their place. If we take a look at the space from out of bounds, you'll see that this area is a singular room loaded in, with nothing but an empty hallway attached to it. Beneath this level though, there's something the devs forgot to remove before packaging the game for release. There's a red button with text above it that says, "Press to start memory." This asset was likely used during playtesting to load in this segment of the game fast. That way they don't have to replay the whole section while verifying everything loads in and functions correctly. If we put the wrong block in during the minigame, Huggy will be shocked to correct his decision making. You can watch this in slow motion, where you can see that the electricity is really these small blue particles shaking aggressively in front of the camera. Like this, it looks less like electricity and more like a swarm of blue little bugs attacking Huggy. From this point, you'll have to obtain the following disc by rerouting the gas and breaking through a window upstairs. This whole process takes a fair bit of time, so I thought it made more sense to break through the glass early. There's no red gas, but I still died instantly when walking inside. To get around this, I broke the entire wall down instead, and this allowed me to just grab the disc from the hallway and carry it back to the machine. Entering the second memory, we can do a little exploring. First and foremost, directly outside the play area, we can find a piece of text floating just beyond the wall. It's literally just the word text at the moment, but that will change shortly. Like the first memory, there's another button here with the same text as before, only this time it's facing inside the level instead of being placed beneath it. After dancing with the toys for a bit, we're told to dispose of the bad toy. This whole process is super grim, but hopefully it's not as bad as it seems. When we drop the toy into the box, it will just pass through the shadowy barrier and fall straight down. They'll pass through the floor and go out of bounds where they'll unload. When the toys begin falling from the ceiling above, you'll see that there are no chutes involved. The toys are just loading in, clipping through the ceiling, where they fall straight down. Where are these toys coming from? I can understand now why Huggy gets so worked up about it. Outside the level, we can additionally find the boxes used in the previous memory occupying this empty space. They're in the same position as before, which makes me believe these memories are all lined up in the same location. If we look beneath the level, there were a couple of platforms down here that were probably left here by mistake. They match some of the textures used in this area, but it's hard to say if they serve a real purpose. In the third memory, we're wheeled down this hallway by a worker who is taking you to a conditioning room. From another angle, the worker is simply sliding across the floor with no visible walking animations. Huggy doesn't exist at this point either, nor is there any equipment to transport him. This whole cutscene is just a lone worker ice skating down the hallway, which is pretty glorious. Inside the room ahead, there's another worker behind the glass, though he's completely static at this point since he can't be seen by the player yet. Moving the camera back, we'll get a better look at this area, and doing so shows us that there are two different hallways here. The one we enter from, and this one, where the final cutscene takes place. We'll be taking a look at this in a second though. Huggy's restraints just sort of appear when we arrive, and after breaking out, this worker goes into a total panic. He's freaking out, and honestly I can't blame him, considering a floating pair of arms is just looming over him right now. As the end cutscene takes place, you can see a worker stuck inside the door over here in an A pose, but the action is taking place on the other side. As soon as the cutscene starts and Huggy chases after the worker, he bolts for the door with chairs and other equipment exploding into the air. In slow motion, this is an epic chase, with Huggy's floating arms obliterating everything in their path. It's funny because the chairs and stuff explode with what looks like electricity and smoke, which doesn't make a ton of sense. At the end of the chase, Huggy T-poses on the worker for a second, lunging forward and grabbing him with a single arm. After completing the memories, we'll gain access to the door ahead, starting a chase with Huggy Wuggy that leads you into the vents. Huggy falls with you as the vent breaks, only to be distracted by this projection of Kissy on the wall. From here, you'll evade our big blue friend while grabbing batteries hidden throughout the room. Once all the batteries are in place, you'll head through this big door, leaving Huggy behind and continuing onwards. So before we even start the chase, I moved the camera down this hallway and found that Huggy is already waiting for us, although he's striking a pretty solid T-pose. He stays here until we hit the trigger inside the hallway, where he instantly snaps into this animation and heads through the door, barreling at the player. He hit me, and the jump scare kinda broke for a second, only for his model to continue sliding down the hallway. This chase sequence is pretty typical for a Huggy pursuit, though something interesting takes place in the vents. When viewed like this, we can see that the old copy of Huggy unloads, as this cutscene version takes its place. The vent has completely disappeared as well, with a giant hole opening in the ceiling. I tried breaking this chase a little bit by freezing Huggy and running ahead, but his part of the level unloaded because I was too far away, so he just kind of fell into the abyss. Whoops! Once we've fallen down into this area, you can see that there's an extra Huggy too. After one version breaks through the wall and walks through another, this version begins freely patrolling the area while we hunt for batteries. As for stuff out of bounds, there really isn't much here. That said though, I wanted to mess with Huggy a bit while we're here. First, I tried making Huggy incredibly fast to see how different this section plays out. What resulted was an absolute nightmare. He wasn't super fast when just walking, but after I called him over using the projector, he became the real blue blur. What followed was probably the biggest jump scare I ever experienced in Poppy Playtime, when he flew past the door and snatched me up. Not cool, man. Next, I had the idea to shrink him down to see if it was any easier. If anything, it became way funnier, since he moved at the same speed. But our enemy was a microscopic Huggy that had the power to insta-kill me, so it was no less terrifying. I learned at this point that even if Huggy is made super wide, his jump scare model remains a regular size. That doesn't make this any less amazing though. Just look at him go. I felt I messed with Huggy enough by this point, so I forced the exit door open and began to head through. And somehow this still broke Huggy. His animation stopped and he hunched over, sliding around in the same pose while trying to get me. Despite freezing here, when I ran in front of him, he still saw me and began chasing me while never changing poses. This was a mixture of goofy and terrifying, so I don't really know how to feel. But with that, that's everything I found hidden behind the scenes and off camera in the Biodiversity Lab and Huggy's Memories. Thanks for watching, and cheers!